Hi, today we're talking about the age of television, but I'm actually going to start by talking about the death of television. I think there's lots of data that suggests that the decline that is evidenced in some of the current statistics is going to only increase very rapidly. And I compare it, rather than just a tipping point, I compare it to a snowball rolling down a mountain that's going to turn into an avalanche very soon. And so we'll start with that. I'm going to go through some statistics, some data that I've been able to collect just recently from the most recent research published. And then after that, a team of students will go back and talk about the history of television. So that's what we're going to do today. And so I do apologize. Let me apologize in advance that when I did my presentation, I actually did it after some students presented, and I failed to take a look at the webcam and where it was showing. So you get mostly from my nose down or something like that, but take a look at the slides or what I'm trying to emphasize, the new data that we've collected, and at least the audio should be fine. Okay. I brought up the slideshow that is mostly redundant, so I'm going to skip forward. But maybe as I skip forward, some things might pop up that I want to expand on. One thing that has always kind of jumped out at me when the originator of some of the early TV broadcasting was a guy, he's not mentioned here, but from a little town in Idaho. Idaho is one of the most rural states in America. It's just, we were still in an age when things were not so complicated that a smart person in a small town couldn't be contributing. Nowadays it seems like, we kind of came back to it. We went through an era when all the innovations seem to come through big corporations. And now we've gotten back into an era, in the internet era, where suddenly you have innovators who are doing it in their garage and so forth. You have the small-time innovators that are becoming rich and famous. So we kind of went through an era, like I said, where people were working things in their garage, literally in the late 1800s. Then we went to an era where it was all corporations, and then we went to an era where it's back to the garage again, which is kind of interesting. Philo Farnsworth is one I was talking about from the little town, and so he transmitted the first electronically scanned TV in 1927. So he, like I said, a really small town in very rural Idaho. I'm not exactly sure how he got. I mean, it's still a fairly complicated science, and how he became knowledgeable enough to do it, but he was. Again, I'm going to just skip forward and this just shows how TV expanded in America specifically. So you see, really wasn't much going on in 1950. This is the year I was born, by the way, 1950. So I've kind of lived through the television era. Those shows that they showed a little bit of, the Lone Ranger and all that, were some of my favorite TV shows as a kid growing up. Really only became kind of a cognitive of TV maybe in 1954, 1955. And so my parents by then had the TV set. I'm not sure exactly when they bought it, because I don't. My recollection is not very good. Before 4 years old. But I guess all of my memorable life, I can remember the TV set. By the 1960s, most people, almost 90% of the people had a TV. 1965, 92%. This is one of those areas where you have to redefine poverty. As I mentioned today, a poor person in America not only has a color TV set, they've got a mobile phone, they've got hot water, they've got their indoor plumbing, they've got all the stuff that a king would, trade a lot of his
his kingdom for to have, 100 years earlier. So what is poverty in America compared to poverty in other countries? There's not very much comparison. The average poor person in America has a car, or, you have a lot of advantages if you're poor in America. Through much of my time growing up, we only had 3 TV stations, or possibly we could pick up a little bit of the public station. I didn't watch much of that. They didn't have very good programming when I was young. So it was mostly the big 3, the ABC, CBS, and NBC. Everybody in America got those 3, and that was about it, plus public TV. There was no Fox yet. There was no... Cable was developed, as was mentioned, towards the end of the 1960s, I think, is when it really started taking off. And it was not to provide a bunch of extra programming. When it was established, is because they would it was someplace in a rural area that could not pick up the broadcast signal. So they'd put a big antenna on top of a hill and then run a cable down to the village or whatever so that everybody could get the signal. So they were still getting the same signals, still only these 4 stations at that point. They were just able to capture those 4 stations, whereas otherwise they'd have no TV at all. So when cable first started, that was its only purpose, was to establish a system that would capture the signal from a far distance and bring it down by cable into the households. It was later when cable suddenly started becoming more than just that. And that's why what cable stood for originally, the CATV, was Community Antenna Television. And so that was just to set up a big antenna for the entire village that was some distance away from the broadcast signal. This is just basically the increase of households. That's kind of reflected in the past graphic. But you see, by 2000, almost everybody not only had TV, but as I understand this chart, this is how many TVs they had. So the average home now, was up towards 7 TV sets in their house. So everybody had a TV. Every kid had their own TV, basically, and it became fragmenting to the family, whereas in the early years, it was very uniting. We all sat around one TV set, and, if somebody wasn't interested, they'd wander off and go read a book. But otherwise, everybody was watching the same show. So it not only was uniting, it was uniting to the family because we were doing this together. It was also uniting to the entire society because there were only those 3 main channels plus public TV, not real great in those days. And so it's uniting for the society because when somebody said, "Did you see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan?" most people had seen the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And so everybody could talk about it. It was a live event that was exciting for the whole society. Or disgusting or whatever, however the reaction was. Some of the old timers might have found it disgusting, but it stirred up conversation throughout society because everybody saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan's show. I think I mentioned before, Ed Sullivan was a journalist from New York. It was just a variety show. It wasn't a contest, but if you wanted to make it big in entertainment, you needed to get on Ed Sullivan's show because everybody was watching it. And so the Beatles really took off after they went on Ed Sullivan because they were relatively, they were picking up supporters in America, but they had never been to America before, basically. And so they came in Ed Sullivan, and suddenly the Beatles really took off with their record sales and so forth because they'd made it big in the biggest consumer market. Just in the last week or 2, I've been writing 2 new chapters for a new book, and so I've been gathering more information. Some of this you've already seen, so I'm not going to bother to go through this. One of the questions you had in the test was that the Millennials watch about 3 times as much news on smartphone as boomers do, and that was a true question. So you're seeing that's one of the most significant differences between the younger generation and the older generation in America. is that the younger generation is much more mobile, and the boomers are, of course, dying off. And so you're going to see the whole society go more mobile as the older generation either accepts mobile and begins. I'm not a great mobile user, even though I'm going to be teaching mobile journalism next semester. It's not my first choice. I'd much rather be using when I say mobile, I'm not a great smartphone user. I much prefer my smart pad, partly because of my big fingers, and trying to type on a smartphone is hard for me. And partly because I don't know, maybe my eyes are getting older or whatever. I'm part of that older generation that'd rather use my laptop or my iPad or my smart pad rather than a smartphone. But anyway. Some of this we already looked at, so I'm going to skip forward on that too. But I added some here towards the end that I wanted to share with you. We already talked about multitasking. That's becoming, again, a bigger and bigger deal. In fact, let me turn back to that a second, or I guess leave it here for a second. That makes it difficult to actually get the statistics. When we talk about the competition with TV now, we tend to be talking about the competition between online TV and traditional broadcast TV or cable. And in some ways that's appropriate. It's comparing video to video entertainment. On the other hand, you can't really, there's actually more digital advertising now already than TV advertising. So when you count all of digital is already beating TV. And in a very real sense, if you count entertainment to entertainment, now digital is already ahead of TV. Because people, you have to count Facebook as entertainment. What else you're going to count that? It's more or less entertainment anyway. So, and even the videos, do they count the amount of videos you watch on Facebook and compare that when they're comparing it with the broadcast TV or cable TV? I doubt that they're really, I doubt that their surveys are adequately accounting for some of the videos that we are watching, because we're watching them on Facebook, and we don't think of that as being TV. We don't think of that as being directly competitive with TV, and yet one of the main things I do on Facebook is watch video. And so it's certainly a very big part of my Facebook activity. It's not 100% by any means. Maybe it's only 30%. I'm not really sure. I'd have to analyze that. But that's my point, is I don't think that the surveys are adequately accounting for the video that people are watching on social media, whether it's Facebook or whatever social media you prefer. So I think some of the comparisons between online TV and offline TV, if you would, is really missing the point. It's already, probably the most important point is where's the advertising going? And the advertising is already more on digital than it is TV. So that's the most important of the tipping point factors. And, excuse me, I guess my point of bringing that up with multitasking is now, people are multitasking while they're watching TV. How do you count that? So if we actually change our question to what is your preferred entertainment, digital or at least online / mobile versus TV / cable, now I think that's a whole different question. And they're actually they are multitasking. So where are they putting their attention? That has to hurt the power of, again, going back to the economics of it. And you have to consider economics when you're talking about these technological transitions, because it doesn't work until it works economically. Once it works economically, it works. Well, clearly the digital works economically. So if somebody's sitting there doing their Facebook at the same time as they're watching a TV show, how are you counting that? I think at this point they're still counting that as TV time mostly, even though they have these charts like this where they're multitasking. Well, I guess this is not multitasking. Well, anyway, this is the one the previous ones and multitasking. Yeah, it's still economically you're reducing somebody's attention to advertising. I've mentioned before what you're really selling with advertising is people's attention. That's what you're selling. Whether it's a newspaper or magazine, whatever it is you're selling, when you're selling advertising, you're selling people's attention. If you don't have their attention, there's no reason to buy it. And so if you're multitasking with Facebook and TV, which one is going to give their advertisers the best bang for their buck, as we say? I'm not even sure. It might well be Facebook is going to be a better buy at the moment of multitasking. I'm not really sure. I doubt that anybody's really covered that very well in their research. I think, I'm not sure if we covered this chart before, but we will cover it again. This is the U.S. simultaneous internet and TV users. So again, we're seeing the numbers. There's a little over 300 million people in America, and this is only deals with adults. So basically, you're dealing with a lot of people who are simultaneously using the internet and TV. The red line is just the percentage of change. So it was a lot more, and now maybe a little bit less more, but the numbers are still going up. So the numbers and the percentages are going up overall, but the amount of change is coming down just a little bit. But more and more people are multitasking. We talked about this already. In fact, I did a little more research on it. And I think I put some text, I'm not sure, I was going to just put some text on one of the pages from the chapter I'm writing right now. But we already talked about that Facebook is going to spend $1 billion to get to become a competitor with online TV, with original programming. Apple is also doing the same thing, $1 billion in this next year, or maybe that's this year. No, in 2018. So those are both spending $1 billion. Netflix is spending, I think it's committed to about $8 billion of original programming next year. So we're talking about really big numbers of people coming in. Disney's going to enter the market. They haven't entered yet, but I think in 2018, I'm trying to think about, I think they're planning for 2019. Disney's going to come into the market and become a competitor with online TV. You have a lot of others that are already there, like HBO is going to start selling their services separately, so you don't have to do cable in order to get HBO, for example. You can buy their service separately, like you can these others. You have sports programming. One of the biggest things that I think is causing people to pause on changing from TV and cable is sports. And that's from the research I'm seeing, that is coming up as a big factor, is you don't want to cancel your cable if you can't get all the sports you want. Guys especially are really into sports. And so in America, the National Basketball Association and the National Football League both offer separate packages. You can buy them separately. They're a little bit expensive, however, and in some cases they want all the money up front, like $150 for a season ticket for one of those leagues. And so that's caused me to hesitate because I really don't have much time for TV anyway. I wish that I could watch sports when I had time, but I don't want to spend $100 to $200 subscribing to one of those and then only watch a couple games a year or whatever because I'm too busy. So that's one reason why I'm mostly I follow sports on ESPN.com, which is mostly replays. I don't get much original. There's some, I think the college playoffs, university basketball playoffs are on ESPN typically. The World Series, the baseball, professional baseball playoffs were on radio, so I got to listen to those live. For 1 year they were selling all of the audio to all of the football games, for the professional football games, for like $12 for the season. I definitely jumped on that. I didn't mind listening instead of watching it. But I think that's one of the big obstacles to the internet taking over and pushing broadcast and cable out of the way is sports. And that is being changed a little bit. There's another company, who is it? I don't remember right now, but there's another company coming into the online TV that is bringing sports with it. Oh, I know it is. It's the Turner, CNN Turner, is coming online, and they're going to bring sports with them. How much sports, I don't know. But that would be a really big deal if they brought a lot of football and basketball online. They would become a major player, a major competitor online to the other online providers, but also obviously a competitor to the offline competitors. So a lot is changing. They're spending a lot of money in it. That's where it's hard to predict how quickly this tipping point is going to take full effect. Is how do you calculate in all the innovation and investments that are happening right now? You have all these major players, Disney and CNN Turner and all these other companies coming in and going to add their billions of dollars of investment into this. So, people like eMarketer is a major reporter on what's happening in this competition. But their trend line to me is only reflecting what would happen if no other innovation and investment came into the market. And yet that's not happening. That's not the case. Lots of investment and lots of innovation is coming into the market. That's why some of the favorite programs, they mentioned in one of the other researchers that I showed you, that now the most popular, when you ask people where do you watch your favorite show, it is now online. It's not on TV. So even though, on the other hand, most people watch their default channel is TV still. That's the one they turn to immediately, and that's the one they use the most. But when you ask them where is your favorite show, it is now online. And so that's showing that, reflecting the fact that most people in America are now also online with their TV. Mostly Netflix. Netflix is the biggest player in online TV in America anyway. I pay like $10 a month for Netflix, and that's about all I really need because I don't get to watch much TV. I do like binge watching, and so I start a TV series and I just watch everything for a long time and finish the whole thing. So it's more like a novel. You're getting to know the characters and everything, and so I really enjoy binge watching. And then I get done with one series and I go to another series. A lot of them are that I've been watching have been original Netflix programs. But it does let me do it my own schedule. So a lot of times I'm watching a TV show at midnight or something when I get done with my schoolwork and my exercise and so forth. I'm watching a show between 12 and 1 o'clock before I go to bed and get my 6 hours of sleep. So it accommodates my lifestyle. Hulu just sent me a advertisement yesterday and said they'd sell me their services for $6 a month if I came to them, at least for the next year, $6 a month. I've been curious about Hulu, and so I might go ahead and pick up Hulu for $6 a month, even though I don't watch much TV. But that's the sort of competition that's going on and why I would watch. I never watch TV except on vacation, and when I go back to America, then I might be watching TV with my kids and grandkids. And I do watch sports when I get there. Like I said, that's what I miss mostly is live sports programming. So that's my perspective on it. Okay, so primary way in which U.S. TV viewers watch their favorite show. This is the one I showed the other day. So now it is digital, online, rather than TV now. So that is a major factor in the idea of the tipping point. How do you watch it? It's preferred devices for viewing TV. So you see now this red is in 2017. How much has changed in 2016 and 2017? A dramatic change in 1 year, and that's where a tipping point fouls up people. Even very good researchers like eMarketer have been following this very closely. This is a shocking result here. That suddenly so many people are watching their favorite show on digital, either on the desktop or laptop, or on their smartphone or their smart pad. And it's, the TV's lost half of their viewers as far as favorite programs go. So that's where that innovation, where Netflix spending billions and billions of dollars to create new programming, is affecting this change that is hard for anybody doing research to try to predict what's going to happen. This is, I think this is a new chart. A new chart, but still the same, a similar content as I talked about before. So this goes back to March 2011. So this was back when I was predicting what would happen. When I saw this was the time spent, and so TV, internet was picking up in 2011, obviously. This is mobile, 15% already in 2011. Excuse me, that's radio. Radio, and then this is internet, 8.1%. And then newspapers here with 4.9%, and this was magazines, 3.3%. That's the percentage of their media time they were spending with this different media. One of the questions that I asked you was which one, from a different chart. I didn't show you this chart. I showed you a different chart that showed more than 1 year. Which one was losing, or which ones were losing viewership, and that included all of them except mobile. Even internet was losing viewership compared to mobile. And so that was kind of maybe a trick question. It wasn't as logical as you might have thought. You might have thought, gee, internet must be gaining viewership also. But actually, in the chart that I showed you, all of them were losing viewership except mobile was zooming up. And so mobile is the big player right here. That we have to pay a lot of attention to. So when I saw, this was the time spent, this was the advertising spent on these different media. So this is about the same, time spent, 42 something, advertising spending, 42 something. That's what you would expect. If people are spending 42% of their time on TV, they should be exposed to about 42% of the advertising. That makes sense. And that's what you would expect. Here, this was the internet. It was behind a little bit, but not too terribly. It was true that advertisers they weren't quite sure how to handle online advertising yet. And so you saw there was some discrepancy. There was more use of the internet than there was advertising still. This was radio. Radio. This was radio. So they were being used a lot. And they were getting actually a little bit less advertising than perhaps they deserved. People kind of look down on radio a little bit, so they have to fight for their advertising a little bit because it's not visual. And so even though it can be quite powerful, and I think maybe people should use radio a little bit more if it's the right market. If it's the demographics that are likely to be commuting to work and stuff, then that commuting hour that is their prime time is during the hours when people are going to work and coming home from work. That's their prime time. And so that can be very valuable. You see, this is mobile. Let me jump over that a second. So TV, or rather newspaper was then, even in 2011, they were only spending 4.9% of their time on newspaper. They were getting 16.5% of the advertising. So newspapers were getting way more advertising than they deserved. Way more advertising than people were giving attention to it. And so it was obvious there was got plenty of room for that advertising to drop further and further because there were too many people advertising for the small market. Magazines also only 3.3% of their time. They were still getting 10.6% of the advertising. So they were way over advertised. But this is the one that I said, hey, watch this. Only 0.5% of advertising in 2011 was spent on mobile. 0.5%. And yet it was up here at 8.1% of the time. And so way back then I was telling my students, watch this. In a free market, what's going to happen? People are going to pour in their dollars. They're going to pour in their innovation. They're going to figure out how they're going to take advantage of this audience because they're not doing it now. There's a vacuum there that sucks in investment and sucks in innovation. And so that's the way it was in 2011. And now mobile is the big thing. It's people are pouring all sorts of money into mobile right now. And also innovation. So here, when you're talking about the total U.S. media ad spending share by mobile, 2016, 2021, this of course is projected since we're not there yet. Excuse me, by media. So they're just saying digital altogether. So you see over here, digital's already gone TV, just slightly. In 2016, they passed TV for all digital, so that's what I was explaining earlier. And over here, they're going to pass everything else combined. By 2021, there'll be more digital advertising than all the other traditional media. They're all going to be taking a dip between now and then. And digital will be up to 51, and most of that increase will be mobile. I just put this on to show you where I was getting some of this new information. So the mobile advertising has been really fueled, as it says here, by the targeting and personalization tactics. So people want to be able to target people where they're most influenced, and people with, especially the younger generation is using their mobile all the time. It's always with them. They can also do things with mobile that they can't do otherwise. So I mentioned before they can use they can set it up so that when just the other day my wife and I went to McDonald's. I think I mentioned this, and suddenly she was on her mobile phone. She got a whole bunch of ads from the local stores up there in that area by McDonald's. So it's tracking you where you're at. And it's sending you signals when you get close to their store. That's something that other media can't do. So now they can, in fact, while we're there, we got a special offer to leave McDonald's and go to Burger King to get our dinner. They give us a discount if we go over there instead. And so that's, again, something they're tracking that and personalizing it and doing it by location, where you're at. Some of the rest stuff we've talked about already. Of course, digital video is going to pick up more and more advertising. And that's one of the things I would expect to see at this point is that some of these people are going to come in with maybe free video entertainment, kind of like the old broadcast TV. That they're going to come in and bet that they can pick up enough advertising to pay for it with advertising. That as more advertising is going online anyway, then why not? Why couldn't they do that? So I think somebody's going to come in with that strategy. In essence, YouTube already has that strategy, has from the beginning, but they also have a paid service as well for more current programming. But I think it's possible that somebody else, one of these big players that's coming in, might try that tactic and try to go purely on advertising. But we'll see how that works out. So retail ad spending growth will be driven by mobile, social, video formats. All those are the three big trends right now: online, mobile, social, and video. And so you see here we're at in 2017. We're seeing see a big growth. When they get the final reports, we're seeing a big growth this year. You're seeing how it's going to go from there. Going to jump, major jumps every year is the prediction. And this might be conservative. eMarketer, where I get a lot of my information, it tends to be conservative. And I'd say in some cases, much too conservative. They don't want to get out on the limb. They don't want to be overly optimistic about it. But I think they're not being realistic about how quickly things are changing. So they have admitted, one of their recent stories was, oops, we need to bring down our estimate on what TV is going to be making over the next few years. And I still don't think they came down anywhere close enough they didn't come down enough. So according to Cantor, TV will remain the major outlet for retail ads. So you see there's going to be a delay of this coming down. These are just showing traditionals, not showing digital. But it will certainly surpass all of the other traditional. It will keep up its advertising because it's multimedia, because it still has that kind of monopoly in lots of ways. It's still the default entertainment source for the moment. And I say that, again, with emphasis, for the moment they're the preferred entertainment source. But that's questionable. Again, questionable because they're only comparing that to online video, that is online comparable TV sort of programming. They're not comparing that to that plus Facebook, plus Twitter, plus all the other entertainment media that's on the internet. Because then, if you consider all of that, again, as I said, digital's already surpassed TV. So if you put it all together, it's ahead of TV. But with pure just comparing, again, I don't think they're considering all the video. Like when they talk about Facebook, they're not considering the video in Facebook. If they talk about Twitter, they're not considering all the video on Twitter and so forth. They're not considering the video impact of some of these social media and so forth. Mobile ad spending among retailers is expected to increase by 19.4% this year. So by 20%, basically, it's going to increase just in 1 year. So you see what's happening. Now, a lot of that is facilitated. In 2011, I mentioned before about the only advertising you could do in mobile was SMS. That was it. There wasn't much smartphone programming. The websites hadn't adapted to smartphones, so and still a lot of them haven't. And so it's hard to go to a regular website on your smartphone and be very satisfied with it. You're still doing too much left and right scrolling to see the whole site. That's changing very rapidly because mainly because of Google and I think Yahoo already before that. They're penalizing those who are not mobile friendly. And so if you want to be highly ranked in a Google search, you have to get mobile friendly. Otherwise, you're going to be penalized for it. And I think that's going to be an increased penalty. They were originally in 2015 when they first added that to their algorithm. Everybody was freaking out and saying, "Oh, it's going to destroy companies. Everything's going to change everything. Companies are going to go out of business because they're not mobile friendly." Well, that didn't happen. The algorithm obviously did not make that much of an impact at that time. But I think we can expect Google to make that a bigger and bigger part of their algorithm, as well as the other search engines are going to do the same thing. So that's one of the things that happen. And of course, some of the big players with mobile advertising are Facebook. Facebook adapted, and so since Facebook is very popular anyway, it adapted rather quickly. And so that Facebook started, in fact, going back to my original issue, is that Facebook shows now, how do I say this? People watch more videos on Facebook than they do YouTube now. Now, they don't watch as long of videos on Facebook, but they watch numerically more videos on Facebook than they do on YouTube. And so that has made Facebook a major player in video, and yet I doubt that they're counting that in the video-to-video comparison with TV. Some of the newer media also are starting to really emphasize video. to where they're becoming bigger and bigger players with online video, and maybe not being counted in these surveys about where do you watch your video programming. They're not doing TV shows, but they're doing video. They're doing video entertainment. So how do you count the video entertainment that you get on Facebook and compare that to TV? It's very hard to make that comparison, and I don't think it's being adequately counted in that comparison. But anyway, so YouTube became a major advertiser because they adapted immediately. It's easier to adapt video than it is anything else. Facebook became a major player with mobile advertising right off the bat. Of course, Google handled their advertising was still the same. Their biggest advertising is search advertising. In fact, you may not know this, but Google makes as much money in search advertising as all the other advertising on the internet. And so basically the advertising you see when you do a search, now they've just recently changed it to where they're hiding it a little bit. They're putting a few listings above your organic search and a few below it. And they're making them look a little bit more like the organic search to kind of fool you a little bit. They're taking away the ads on the side panel. There's no more ads on the side panel in the Google search. It's all right above or right below the organic search. And so they're making changes to compete also. They're basically making one of the biggest moves in online advertising right now is called native advertising. I'm not sure, have we talked about native advertising at all? You know what native advertising? Okay. We'll talk about it more when there's a chapter in advertising, and we'll talk about that more. But native advertising is to put advertising in that looks like it's organic. So it's particularly effective in social media. So when you go onto Facebook, you'll see something in the timeline that says sponsored. You may not know that sponsored is paid by somebody, but that's what it means. That's an ad. They try to make it look like not an ad. And they try to make it interesting, otherwise there's no point putting it in the timeline. So you want your paid ad to be as interesting to people as the unpaid organic listing, stuff in the timeline. And so the big move in advertising right now, one of the major moves is native advertising. There is a little bit of a backlash because people are just being told this stuff is paid, by the way. You should be careful about what you believe because it's paid for, and it's being put on your timeline without your permission, stuff like that. But it's not just there. It's actually the major newspapers in America are now selling native advertising. I used it when I first got out of university. I created native advertising in newspapers, and I did extremely well with native advertising. So they're talking about this being something new. It's not really something new. I used it in 1974, and when I bought my first newspaper, a lot of the reasons why I doubled my revenue in 1 year was native advertising. And so that was a long time ago, almost 50 years ago, more than 40 years ago anyway. So that was, native advertising has existed, and it's been very effective. I can tell you it's very effective. This is one, I used native advertising with a political campaign, and I may have told you this story already, excuse me if I did, and I'll go into more detail later, but I took over a political campaign of a person running for mayor of Tampa. He was a Republican, and no Republican had ever been mayor of Tampa. So he would have been the first Republican ever. And out of 8 people running for mayor, he was number 8. He was way down. And I started producing native advertising. I bought full-page ads. I'll show it to you when we get to advertising. But we bought full-page ads and made it all look like a news page. And the supervisor of public, or the supervisor of elections, who was supposed to oversee all the election advertising and stuff, he told us that he had read most of the page before he realized it was an ad, which is the point of native advertising. Even though all the way across the top in every column, and all the way across the bottom in every column it said paid political ad, paid political ad, paid political ad. It was in real small type, of course, about 6-point type. And people, even the supervisor of elections, read most of the page and thought it was not, they did not know it was an ad, which again is the point of native advertising. Anyway, we brought our person from dead last, from number 8, to number 2 in the primary, and the polls had him as number 1. I think he only lost because of the mafia. Tampa's a mafia town, and my candidate was an ex-cop. And they definitely did not want an ex-cop as mayor in a mafia town. And that made me wonder about the daily newspaper, too, because the daily newspaper didn't want him either. And even to the point that later on it found out the guy who did win the election by 200 votes out of 50,000 had money, had investments in porno filmmaking. The daily newspaper there ran this story about the mayor having investments in porno filmmaking, that big of a story, in like page 20 of the newspaper. So it made me wonder about who really owned that chain of newspapers, if the mafia owned it. But anyway. So native advertising has been effective for a long time. The Democrats offered me a job back then to come over to the dark side and do advertising, run campaigns for them, and I wouldn't do that. But anyway, it was in the early 1970s and mid 1970s. It was already being used and was very effective, and that's one of the big movers right now. Like I said, even now, probably the newspapers that looked at my native advertising with some horror or disgust are now using native advertising, including the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, Washington Post are all doing native advertising now. And there's big ethical questions about that because people are not aware sometimes when they read native advertising, even though it says paid ad or whatever, they don't watch, they don't see that. And of course, if you're doing a good job as a native advertiser, you're purposely trying to fool them. And that is the whole point. There's no point doing a native ad unless you're trying to fool people. And so it's a big trend to fool people and make them look at your ad as if they're looking at a news story or a Facebook posting or Twitter posting or whatever. So this is what's happening with mobile versus desktop. Mobile advertising is a focus for retailers, most notably for search ads. It's very close right now, but in the overall competition between search ads, Google search ads, and all the display ads, they're both at just a little over 48%. So they're almost dead even, and the others are miscellaneous. I'm not sure what the miscellaneous is offhand. But search ads represent almost half of all the ads, all the revenue, the ad revenue online, and then all the display ads, all the native ads, all the other display ads, everything else you can think of that you recognize as an ad, all together only equals the search ads. So that's why Google is the biggest company on the internet, is because they get paid all that money for their search ads. So that is a big deal. So on here, this is mentioning that the retailers are putting a lot of money into search ads. So when you do a search, say you're looking for a new pair of shoes and you're going to America and you're in Salt Lake City, then you're going to say Salt Lake City, shoe store, whatever. Up is going to pop. First off, the first 3 ads are going to be paid ads. Then you're going to see the organic listings, and the last 3 ads are going to be paid ads at the bottom. And they're going to try to get your business that way. You click on one of those, and it's going to take you to their website, and you're going to see all their beautiful shoes and stuff that they're going to try to sell you. So search is important, but also, certainly mobile will also bring in, like I said, the Facebook ads and other display ads as well. Digital video ad spending projections. This again, the red is percent of change, so that's not really saying that's coming down. That's just saying the amount of increase is going to come down a little bit. So it's still increasing by 12%. Even the projection to 2021 projection is still going to go up 12%. That's a major increase still. The blue is percent of total digital ad spending. So you see it represents they're predicting that it's not going to go up a great deal, but it is still a major part. And I think one of the main reasons why, by numbers, it's going up a lot. So in the black is digital video ad spending. All ad spending is going up on the internet. And so what it's saying is digital ad spending is going to increase a lot, almost double from 2017 to 2021, and yet its percentage of all advertising is not going to increase that much because all advertising on digital is going to go up, partly because of the decline of TV versus the internet and so forth. But again, the audience is online, and so the advertising is moving online. So all advertising is going to increase overall, but video will be an important part of it. Part of the research I'm reporting on in this new book is about video advertising. There's a survey of marketers and asking them what type of advertising they prefer using. Video is not, well, one survey said, what's the most powerful type of advertising? And it skyrocketed. Video's number one, by far. Then they say, which ones do you use the most? Video's not number one. Then you ask them, which one do you want to learn more about? Video's number one. So what we're having here is that we have companies that don't have good video staff. That's really what we're seeing. You don't have people to create good video advertising. Therefore, you don't use good video advertising. You don't have the staff to do it. And so that could change this number, these percentages a lot if companies start staffing properly. Because that appears to be the only problem, is that the executives themselves want to learn more about doing video. They know it's the most powerful, but they're not using it the most. They're using other types of graphics, visuals and so forth, rather than video. And so it appears to me very clearly that it's only because they don't have the expertise. That's the only reason why they're not. It might be partly that and partly the time it takes to do good video. And so it may be more expensive to produce. It almost certainly is. We've kind of talked about that already in the age of audiovisual, about the cost and the time it takes to do good video of any type. And so when you talk about advertising, it's the same problem. It takes more time and investment to do good video advertising. And so for these variety of purposes or for a variety of reasons, video had not gone up as much as you would think it would because, again, 95% of them say it is the most powerful, but they're not using it the most. So we'll see how that changes. Another source here. I think I showed you this one the other day. Viewers are now more likely to watch their favorite show, and so we see the change here. Again, if you're looking at trends, this is a major trend. 2014 is by far broadcast TV, or cable TV anyway, offline TV. 2015 still almost double. 2016 start to get a little closer. 2017 suddenly your favorite shows online. You see how quickly things can change and why eMarketer and other people can't predict this. They can't predict what's going to happen. Because now all those innovation dollars, all that innovation time and talent and dollars are going into online video. And so nobody's going to be able to predict where it's going to go, except me. And I'm saying it's going to go through the roof. But we'll see. But I'm much less conservative than eMarketer. They're very conservative. Viewers are as likely to watch their favorite TV show on Netflix as online TV. So this is how important Netflix itself has become. So you see how they were overwhelmed in 2014, and now it's basically equal in 2017, and they'll probably cross over because again they're spending. I think this year, in 2018, they're going to spend like $8 or $9 billion on their original programming, just on Netflix. So they're not going away. So how did you find out about those shows? This is important. For the favorite shows on TV, you're finding out about them with advertising. They're having to put ads up to convince you to watch your favorite show on TV. Whereas on the internet, you're finding out by word of mouth. not only less expensive, but that tells you where the buzz is at. People are talking about the online TV shows. They're not talking about the online or on the TV shows, the broadcast TV shows. They're mostly talking about the online TV shows. That is a major, major indication that TV's in trouble. If people are talking about the online TV shows and not talking, they're having to push a whole bunch of ads to get people to go to the network TV shows. That's a major indicator of a tipping point. Another source here. So this kind of brings it back down to a little bit of reality. First off, usage of the different SVOD represents streaming video. Streaming video. So you're talking about well, because Netflix is just growing a little bit. It's by far the biggest. Amazon is becoming the next biggest player. So Hulu was, but Amazon has really taken off. So they're growing tremendously by 50% in 1 year. Hulu is also growing by more than 50%, but they're still quite a ways behind Amazon now. Amazon is the big player, the major competitor against Netflix right now. But again, pending Disney, Turner, Facebook, and everybody else coming into the market, Apple, things are going to change very quickly. 14% use all three of these in America, and that's more than double what it was the previous year. So again, the trend is to go ahead and take more of these services. They're taking Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu, all of them, to have all the options they can possibly want. And that also is if this is increasing, again, more likely people are going to say goodbye to cable. They're spending, they're spending less on getting 3 networks, basically, than cable by quite a bit. And so at some point they'll say, okay, I'm satisfied. Again, my thinking is the biggest bugaboo right now, the biggest problem is whether they feel like they're going to get enough sports. I think the guys are dragging their feet because of that. So these are top reasons that Netflix users give for adding Hulu or Amazon. So specific shows. So they're going to Hulu for specific shows. Greater selection. A little bit of both. Curiosity, a little bit of both. Original shows, a little more to Amazon. Free trial, of course, who doesn't accept free? So they're getting caught up with that. More movies, a little more with Amazon than with Hulu. So Amazon, you can get more of the current movies. So I know my daughter uses a lot of Amazon for that reason. She does Netflix also. I'm not sure she has Hulu. I think she might have all 3. But I know she goes to Amazon when she wants a more current movie. She's more likely to get the current movie at Amazon. I have all viewers say that live TV is still their default. And so that's where we're up here. So this has, among all viewers or among users of each platform, anyway, so basically about half the people are saying TV is still where I go. When I just turn on the TV, I go to live. But when you start adding up all the rest, it's quite competitive. So it's the default. And also these are also basically TV low too. The DVR is basically TV, and VOD is coming through, the video on demand is coming through cable typically. So these ones, of course, video on demand is also available online. So as they discover more video on demand online, this number will represent an online source instead of cable. But right now, a lot of them are going video on demand on cable. Actually, when you add these two, live TV, it's quite a bit more the default than Netflix even. But again, it's changing so fast that I think you're going to you're going to see a lot of swing there over the next year or two, even with the default. But I'm not even sure that really matters. I mean, basically, that's all I'm saying. All it's saying is when you turn on TV, what's the first thing that comes up? Well, okay, my TV is the first thing that comes up. But there's another question here, I think, that also suggests it's still pretty strong. Well, these are the young viewers. So this is not what I was thinking, but anyway, among the younger viewers, TV and Netflix Netflix are about the same. So the light blue are the young people. So they're about just as likely to say Netflix is their default as they are live TV. The others are obviously a lot different. So it's the older crowd that is still making live TV their default, and the overall default of the population in America are the older populations. They're still kind of stuck to their cable. Live TV and Netflix own different TV scenarios. So if you're on live TV, you're doing it for breaking news, you're doing it for local TV, and you're doing it for live sports, as I mentioned earlier. It still dominates live sports. Those are the three reasons why people are staying on live TV. For Netflix, you're going there for binge viewing, like I do. You're doing it to see the old shows you missed before, whatever, past season viewing. Watch on the go, you're using your mobile or whatever. That's the other reason why you do it online. For your DVR, of course, you're catching up. And that's still kind of basically part of, not exactly live TV, but it's TV nonetheless. So the different reasons why you use the different devices. DVR is still very popular, so it's basically the thing that makes live TV competitive with online TV is that it does allow you to watch, do your catch-up viewing, do your binge viewing, do lots of stuff you can do. Why people choose Netflix, they can do if they use their DVR a lot. More TV is watched live than any other way. So the largest share of TV consumption is live TV accounts for more total TV consumption than any other single source. Most common default source. So these are all the reasons why TV is still in a strong point. It is the most common default. It is what they consider the most indispensable. So that question was basically if you had to cancel all your sources except one, which one would you keep? And the answer, 45, would keep their live TV. But again, that will change quickly as people see other alternatives and get used to. Again, the trend line is for digital, so we'll see how that goes. Online sources continue to gain traction. 74% of multi-channel video. That's what the MVPD is, multi-channel. 74% use at least one online TV source. So, and that is a big change. You see, while the percent of viewers who say that live TV is their default source is falling. So this was the default source is falling, and now 74% all subscribe to at least one online provider. So again, those numbers can cause very quick change in the overall environment, video viewing environment. So TV versus streaming video. The number of online TV platforms used by multi-video subscribers continues its upward climb. So again, those with multi-sources are going up from 2 to 2.4 and continue up from there. The average online viewer uses 3.3 devices to watch online content, almost 50% more than in 2013. Again, that means basically they're using their mobile devices, they're using their smart pads, their smartphones. So people are using more and more devices, and as they use more and more devices, that leads into online mobile viewing. on digital viewing. New findings from the 2017 Censure Digital Consumer Survey of 26,000 consumers in 26 countries. Unprecedented change across the connected device landscape. So consumers who own a smartphone, computer, and tablet continue to grow. This is global now. And globally, I believe this is still talking about the global research. The use of a lot of TV shows going down, the use of sports games, viewership going down with there's been a 55% one-year drop in consumers who prefer to watch TV shows on TV sets from 52% in 2016 to 23% in 2017. This is global. So in places like Malaysia, TV is not as strong as it is in America. TV is still the default in America. That doesn't make it the default here. And so we're seeing a much bigger change. This is one of the interesting things about what we're experiencing is that we tend to think that things start in America and go across the globe. And many trends do that. Many trends do that. This one doesn't. And partly because many people around the world, their mobile is their first access to broadband. They're not like in America where most people had broadband already before mobile came along. But in other parts of the world, a good share of the population of the world, first broadband was mobile. And by far the least expensive access to broadband is mobile. That changed the dynamics greatly when you compare America to the rest of the world. There was a survey done between Chinese university students and American university students. Chinese university students were much more dependent on their smartphones than American students. The American students had other habits they had already developed with their desktop, laptop, and so forth, whereas the Chinese students were very avid users of mobile. And I think that's true. Just about 3 or 4 years ago, I went to a conference, spent about a week in Indonesia, and I was amazed. All the way along the line, I flew through China, and on China Southern Airline or whatever airline that is, all the Chinese had their mobile devices out, using them before the plane took off, and that was way more than I'd ever seen anyplace else. Mobile, mobile, mobile. Got to Indonesia, little store owners on their mobile. As they were waiting for customers, they were on their mobile with their whatever they were doing, looking at news, looking at entertainment. Far more mobile use in this part of the world than I see in America. And so the trends in this case do not match what we've been used to, that they start in America and they go to the rest of the world. And maybe in a sense it did start in America. That's where the mobile revolution started. But it's now taken over the rest of the world much faster than it's taken over America because they had more options. And so they haven't converted as quickly. And so that's why, again, according to this other survey, where it's a global survey, now the preferred use is way down in the global survey. 23% count it as their preferred, watching their preferred shows. Computers have taken over the TV sets as preferred viewing in the global setting. So again, 2017, this is laptop, desktop, this is TV. Again, in the global and smartphone, 2014, 2017. Smartphone has nearly doubled in preference for watching video clips. So in the global survey, TV's dying faster than in America, which is, again, an unusual it shouldn't be that surprising. It's understandable why it is. Nonetheless, it fights most of the trends that we've seen over the years. Okay, well, we're out of time. and I think I'm pretty much out of slides anyway. Let me see if this is anything. Oh, these people were able. They went into. I don't know if it shows the number. They went into 1 trillion social media conversations. They would, use technology to go into 1 trillion social media conversations, and out of that, over somewhere over 1 million. I can't find it. I'm not going to try to look for it. Over 1 million of the conversations were about cord cutting, about cutting the cable, and that has picked up tremendously. So lots of people are talking about cutting their cords in America. They just haven't done it necessarily yet, but they're talking about it. If they're talking about it, that's a problem for TV. And so this also is part of the conversation. So you see the conversation picked up 2011, and now it's zooming. In the last few years, everybody's talking, or a lot of people are talking about cutting their cords. So just in social media conversation, I mentioned social media, or at least word of mouth, including social media, was one of the ways that people heard about their favorite TV show. Well, that's an important element of this tipping point experience, is that people are talking about it. They're talking about their new favorite shows on Netflix. They're talking about cutting their cords. This is becoming a big conversation. So, okay, here it is. About 1,100,000 conversations were analyzed that were talking about this. Who they're talking about? Netflix was big on here, but now over here they're talking about a lot of the other competitors. So the conversation is expanding. Sling TV is who's that with? That is with one of the major cable type providers. I think it's Dish TV. I think it's his own Sling TV. And so they become a major part of the conversation. They're a new competitor also. I forgot to talk about them. Sling TV is important. And this again reflects the conversation. Most of it is positive towards cutting the cable. Some is negative. A lot of it is positive towards cutting the cable. And this is the last one, I think. I think I showed you before. This is the ad spending as a share of U.S. media spending. This is digital. This is TV. That's the most important number. As I said, it's hard to evaluate exactly what all is driving digital. A lot of it is video. It's hard to evaluate, compare video versus TV when a lot of the digital is still entertainment, whether it's video or not. It's still entertainment versus entertainment. And the advertising is going online by big numbers now. So this is still a projection from just 2 years from now, but already in 2017, digital is bigger than TV, and that gap is going to increase. So where the dollars are going with the audience. The audience is going online. And so that's the biggest driver of all this. That's why Sling TV. That's why Turner CNN. That's why Disney. That's why all these people are going into the market, because their advertising is going there. They want to be part of this competition. So you're having all this innovation, all this investment going online to become part of the flood of support for online entertainment. And this is not you cannot predict very accurately, as e-marketers trying to do. That's why I say I think their numbers are way off. I think with all this innovation, all this investment going in, the tipping point is, bam, it's going to start more like the snowball, as I mentioned before. It starts as a snowball at the top of the mountain, picks up more and more, and it's an avalanche at the bottom. I think we're going to see the avalanche over the next couple of years towards online TV.
Hello, everybody. Today, we will introduce TV to you. And my name is Zhang Xinlu, and this is my partner, Li Zihan. After radio, TV has become a popular mass medium, and it plays an important role in our life. Even in modern life, we can't imagine if our life is without television. Okay, then it comes the contents. We will introduce the evolution of television, issues and trends in the television industry, influence of new technologies, and finally, a little quiz. Okay, first, I will introduce the origins of television. We know there were two key technological developments in the late 1800s. The first one is cathode ray tube, which is also called CRT. Simply speaking, it combines the principles of camera and electricity, and it is a pioneer to the TV picture tube. And the second one, let's see this one. This one is CRT, and this one is the scanning disc. It works by the rotation. When the disc rotates, the light pass and it produces the TV frame. And these two key technologies laid the foundation for the television. Then comes the mechanical television. It was invented in 1926, and however, there were two disadvantages. The first one is its low picture quality. The mechanical television, the solutions are only 240 lines, but modern televisions, their resolutions are more than 600 lines. And the second disadvantage is it limits the number of new pictures which can be seen per second. And then comes the electronic television. It uses the CRT with better picture quality, no noise, and more compact size. And by 1939, all mechanical television was replaced by the electronic equipment. When a new thing come out, there were always some struggles. The first one is the early broadcasting. It begins at 1928. However, early televisions were expensive and the technology was slow to catch up because development was delayed during World War II. And during the war, many media companies were producing many military electric equipment. And the second one is the color technology. It was delayed even further because early color systems were incompatible with black and white television sets. However, there was a golden age of television from 1950 to 1970. During the golden age of television, television moved away from radio formats and developed new types of shows. Okay, and there were three main developments of television. The first one is the rise of cable television. Cable television initially developed in the 1940s to cater to viewers in rural areas, switched its focus local to national television, offering an extensive number of channels. And here is how it works. The second one is the digital television. In 2009, the traditional analog system, which had been in place for 60 years, was replaced with digital television, giving viewers a higher quality picture and freeing up frequency space. And digital television uses binary code to transmit signals. At last, the era of high-definition television came. As of 2010, nearly half of American viewers have high-definition television. And this television offers a crystal clear picture in widescreen to provide a cinematic experience at home. Then let's go through the change of the television. So fantastic. There is a strong bond between television and culture, and I want to take America as an example. First, I want to introduce the TV shows in America in 1950s. In these days, the company ignore the current events and political issues. They focus on entertainment, and they focus on white middle-class families with traditional nuclear roles, which means the mother is at home and the father is in office. Let's enjoy.
Even when the medium was just starting out, it had some amazing series.
The Lone Ranger.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 decade-defining TV shows of the 1950s.
Now with 2 hits it occurs to me, I can think more clearly than with 3.
For our series on the top decade-defining shows per year,
These are TV shows in 1950s and 1960s. The representative words in this age is violence and escapism. There were some backgrounds such as the space race, Cold War, and Vietnam War.
Forget the Beatles. It's television that really made these years what they were.
My sociology professor will never believe this.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 decade-defining TV shows of the 1960s.
Get fired! You get up! You're through!
For our series on the top decade-defining shows per era, we picked series that spoke to the period in which they were made.
And then is the 1970s TV shows. The representative words are diversity and politicals. There were opposition to Vietnam War and Watergate, and social liberation, and so on.
Do you have any idea what's going on?
Nope. But 5 minutes, we're gonna find out what's happening.
These years were more known for disco and rock and roll, but who can forget all of the amazing television?
Well, look, you're a very interesting group of kids, and I'd love to go on talking to you forever. But it's time to play Let's Go to School.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 decade-defining TV shows of the 1970s.
And in 1980s, the family comedies began to take on social issues, and there were wars on drugs and rise of cable.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful.
In between all the pop music and awesome action movies, we still found time to watch great television. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 decade-defining TV shows of the 1980s.
Oh, that's not magic. That's just hard work.
Suppose I just settle for the pleasure of working on it.
For our series on the top decade-defining shows per era, we picked series that spoke to the period in which they were made, and
in 1990s, there were satellite television and economic growth and so on. So the shows is...
Now I intend to go down in history as Prankster Prince. Okay guys, what'd you come up with?
this decade was more known for the rise of the internet, but it also saw some great television. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 decade-defining TV shows of the 1990s.
Queen Shelley. Good. Now, see if you can find the king.
For our series on the top decade-defining shows per era, we picked series that spoke to the period in which they were made and set the standard for television during that time.
And in 2000, the backgrounds include the war on terror and Bush and Obama presidencies.
This is the left nostril of my brother Reese. It squeaks all night long.
Many people refer to this decade as the second golden age of television. And these shows are the reason why.
You cannot arrest a husband and wife for the same crime.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 decade-defining TV shows of the 2000s.
Oh, God, you're killing me. Oh, God, you're killing me.
For our series on the top 10 decade-defining shows per era, we picked series that spoke to the period in which they were made.
And, culture and television can't be separated. Then I will introduce the issues and trends in the television industry. First, during the 1950s, the cost of producing a single television show increased as shows became longer and production costs soared. So tradition of sponsorship is from a single sponsor to sports advertising. And public television was created to enhance citizenship and also to provide a television service for people in rural areas or those who could not afford to pay for a private television service. And also it reduced the government support. And the network between 1950 and 1970, also called the Golden Age. The big three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, accounted for around 95% of primetime viewing. And then there comes a new form, narrowcasting. It means the cable broadcasters use a process known as narrowcasting, to target niche audiences for their shows. And there were impacts on networks. It has competition from cable and other sources, such as satellite television, including direct TV and dish network and internet, has caused prime time viewing audiences of the big four networks to drop from 43% in 1994 to 27% in 2009. And then my partner will introduce the influence on new technologies.
Today I will introduce the influence of new technologies. The experience of watching television is rapidly changing with the progression of technology, no longer restricted to a limited number of channels on network television or even to a television schedule. Viewers are now able to watch exactly what they want to watch whenever they want. Non-television delivery systems such as the Internet, which enables viewers to download traditional television shows onto computer or smartphone, are changing the way people watch television. Meanwhile, cable and satellite providers are enabling viewers to purchase television shows to watch at their convenience through the use of video-on-demand services, change the concept of prime-time viewing. The first part is about the war between satellite and cable television. The first satellite television signal was broadcast in 1962. However, the television industry didn't utilize satellites for broadcasting purposes until the late 1970s, when PBS introduced public television satellite service. The trouble with early satellite television systems was that they were prohibitively expensive for most families, costing more than $10 million until the mid-1980s, as the price of a satellite dish dropped toward the $3 million mark. Consumers began to view satellite television as a cheaper, high-quality alternative to cable. Cable broadcasters lobbied the government for legal assistance, and under the 1984 Cable Act were allowed to encrypt their satellite feeds so that only people who purchased a decoder from a satellite provider could receive the channel. Following the passing of the Cable Act, the satellite industry took a dramatic hit. The satellite industry's sudden drop in popularity was exacerbated by large-scale anti-dish advertising campaigns by cable operators. The problem was ultimately solved by the actions of the Satellite Broadcasting and Communications Association. The SBCA set up an anti-piracy task force, aggressively pursuing illegal hackers with the FBI's help. Once the piracy problem was under control, the satellite industry companies began to emerge and become profitable in 1984. With the development of satellite industry, the cable video subscribers began to decline. Then the second part is about the current satellite market. As of 2010, the two biggest current satellite television providers are Dish Network, which targets lower-earning consumers, and the DirecTV, which targets its services to more affluent consumers and emphasizes quality and choice in its advertising campaigns, and investing in advanced services and products. Since the 1999 legislation put satellite television in direct competition with cable, the major satellite companies have increasingly pitted themselves against cable broadcasters, offering consumers numerous incentives to switch providers. One of these incentives is the addition of premium networks for satellite subscribers in the same way as premium cable channel HBO. In another overt bid to lure cable consumers over to satellite television, both DirecTV and Dish Network offer a number of comprehensive movies and sports packages. Benefiting from their additional channel capacity and their ability to receive international channels often unavailable on cable. In the mid-2000s, the satellite companies also began encroaching on cable television's domination of bonded package by offering all-in-one phone, internet, and television services. Then the third part is about the impact of DVRs and the internet. Over the past 2 decades, the viewing public has become increasingly fragmented as a result of growing competition between cable and satellite channels and traditional network television stations. Now, television audiences are being presented with even more options. DVRs like TV allow viewers to select and record shows they can watch at a later time. For example, viewers can set their DVRs to record all new or old episodes of the show that list catch and then watch the recorded episodes whenever they have free time. DVRs have been used by advertisers to track which shows are being viewed. DVRs are even capable of targeting viewers with specific ads when they decide to watch their recorded program. The internet allows viewers to download their favorite shows at any time on several different media. However, the internet has typically been bad news for traditional forms of media, newspapers, magazines, the music industry, video rental companies, and bookstores have all suffered from the introduction of the internet. But unlike other media, television has so far survived the internet's effects, and it remains the dominant source of entertainment for most people who are using new media in conjunction with traditional television viewing, watching vast quantities of television in addition to streaming numerous internet videos and catching up on missed episodes via the network's web pages. The fourth part is about new viewing outlets. New viewing outlets such as YouTube and Hulu enable viewers to watch online video clips and entire episodes of television shows and movies free of charge. Then the next part is about video on demand. Video on demand services now available through most cable and satellite providers, either VOD, which provides movies 24 hours a day and enables viewers all the functionality of a DVD player, such as the ability to pause, rewind, or fast forward films, or VOD, which broadcasts multiple copies of a film or program over short time intervals, but doesn't allow viewers to control the video. Then let's see the reason about why people are moving to online TV. And the first of them is because people prefer to watch on their own schedule. The last part is about the interactive television. Moving a step beyond VOD, cable and satellite television providers are combining aspects of traditional television viewing with online content to create an entirely new way of watching shows. Using an additional set-top box and their remote control, viewers can utilize several different features that go beyond simply watching a television show.
Okay, the first question, I think it's very simple. Technological developments in the late 1800s played a vital role in the evolution of television. Which one? Who can answer? Okay, I have told you the cathode ray tube and the scanning disk. The second question, what's the characteristics of digital television? A is signals transmitted using binary code. B is superior quality to analog. C offers a crystal clear picture in widescreen. D bringing signals from distant cities, diversity of additional channels. E less spectrum space required for signals. We can say C is describing the C is describing the high definition television, and D is describing the cable television. So the answers are A, B, and E. The third question, which one is not the issues and trends of television? A, tradition of sponsorship, single sponsor to sport advertising. B, public broadcasting, increased government support, and corporate sponsorship. C, competition with cable, satellite, and internet. D, narrowcasting. It's a little difficult because I have referred to it, but I didn't put it in my slide. The answer is B, because it is public broadcasting, reduced government support, and corporate sponsorship. And
the fourth question is, the first satellite television signal was broadcast in the answer is D, 1962. The last question is, what's the first of the main reasons why people watch original TV on the internet? And the answer is C. They prefer to watch on their own schedule. These are our references. That's all. Thank you.